Basically, Muta is the experience we all probably have felt in various domains in our lives, as well as with media examples, and that is that we feel kind of moved and touched. We have a warm, fuzzy feeling in the chest. Sometimes we have goosebumps or a lump in our throat, or we kind of touch our chest and say things like, "Aw, that's so cute," or "That's so sweet."
Okay, that's really interesting how much or where you can apply Muta. You would usually think maybe about romance novels or movies or something like that you maybe use in movies or in general video material. But you can also use it for completely different things that maybe weren't intended to use them for. Okay, then welcome Dr. Janicke-Bowles to talk to us about Muta as an Eudaimonic Entertainment Experience. And that's the chapter you wrote for the Oxford Handbook of Entertainment with your colleagues, Dr. Thomas Schubert and also Johanna K. Blomster. And yes, today we just want to talk about your chapter, everything that you mentioned there, and just discuss what Muta in general is. But before that, I would like to just introduce you to our audience, because not everyone knows who you are. So you're a positive media psychologist and assistant professor at the Chapman University in Orange County, California. And your research focus is on positive psychology, media and new communication technologies, and also media and spirituality. And you did your master's degree in Tübingen in Germany. It's really nice that you have some connection to Germany as well, in my opinion. It's really cool. And you did that in 2009 in media and clinical psychology. You also got your PhD in mass communication at the Florida State University in 2013, and have a huge achievement, as I might add, that you got a 1.9 million, a huge grant in 2015 for 3 years for your research from the John Templeton Foundation. And it also was directed to Muta research or another research?
Not Muta at that point, because we were not aware of that. Actually, I wasn't even out back then, basically.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It was a collaboration, with specifically Art Rainey and Mary Beth Oliver. So I was just one of the people helping out.
Okay. Yeah, but still, it's a really good achievement, I think. So just to start, maybe you can just say in your own words what Muta is, because that's what we're going to talk about today mainly. And you're an expert on it, so we would like to give you the stage now at first.
Not sure if I'm an expert on it, but I'll try my best. I obviously was so lucky to learn about Muta from Ellen Fisk himself, who has worked with all these amazing other researchers, including Thomas Schubert and Beate Seibt and Johanna Blomster from Norway, that really have been working on this concept for now a couple of years. And what I then basically did is applied it to the media realm, because they're all social psychologists, and so they looked at Muta from more of that angle. And so basically Muta is the experience we all probably have felt in various domains in our lives, as well as with media examples, and that is that we feel kind of moved and touched. We have a warm, fuzzy feeling in the chest. Sometimes we have goosebumps or a lump in our throat, or we kind of touch our chest and say things like, "Aw, that's so cute," or "That's so sweet." And it's elicited by the intensification of communal sharing relations, which really just means that basically two entities, a lot of times, of course, these are humans, but it can also be animals, have an intensification of a connection. And so that can be, or very typical elicitors are coming home experiences, specifically if you think now of Christmas time, of your family comes home for the holidays, and there's like a hug that we see happening, or this kind of intensification of this reunion. It can also be things like animals, cuddling or playing together. Kind of a cuteness has been associated also with Muta. It can be a baby, looking at a baby, or a mom and a baby together. a dog running up to its owner when we're coming home from work. These kind of intensification moments of connection basically are what elicits Kama Muta.
Okay, that's a really interesting topic. That's why we also chose it. And I think it's something, as you said, everyone knows, everyone can relate to it in some way. Everyone has experienced this, especially this "aw" kind of feeling. It's really common, I think, in everyone. So yeah, then thank you very much for that explanation. And just to warm up with a few questions, we want to ask you which movie or series or actually YouTube clip you saw lately has actually moved you to tears as you described it now. Is there something that you recently seen?
That is a good question. I was actually just on a call with another colleague, Daniel Posler from Hanover, and we were talking about the Edeka commercial, where the granddad is kind of pretending his fake death so that the family comes back for the Christmas holidays. And so it's a little bit more on the sad side, but in the end, the reunion of then obviously the happiness of the dead not being dead, and or the granddad and the whole family hugging each other and hugging the granddad. It's like just an example that comes to mind right now. It's not, this commercial has been out for a couple of years, but it still does the trick.
Yeah, it's true. Like when I read the text, it's also actually the first thing I thought about, because I also know the clip that you're mentioning is like so touching and also yes, sad as well, but really nice at the end when everyone comes together and Edeka brings you the message of, yeah, spend time with your family on Christmas. So it's actually a really nice example. That's true. And how often are you moved to tears actually? Because when you do studies on this kind of topic, you usually pick stimulus material, like clips, for example. And do you cry when you like select them or watch them, or are you maybe?
Oh, yeah. I'm a big crier. I cry all the time. Yeah, I mean, since I've learned about the concept and really kind of this idea of this intensification of a communal sharing relation, I notice now even at weddings, and that's obviously one elicitor too, where I just see people hug. I get kind of that awe feeling, and or the aw. So yeah, I mean, I'm very much built close to the water, as we like to say in Germany, right? And so yeah, like in real life as well as in media examples, it can even be the most mundane. I mean, talking about like the shows like The Biggest Loser or The Voice, where just there's kind of a celebration moment at the end or something. These are certainly things I also really easily getting into tears. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Like if I watch Vermisst, like this show where people are trying to find like their relatives, their long lost relatives, I cry every time. It's such a mess, but like, yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. And how did you actually become interested in this area of research?
I mean, Kama Muta just kind of stumbled upon me in that sense, because it obviously fits very much with what I've studied before in terms of transcendent emotions, of elevation and awe and admiration, gratitude. And then somehow, yeah, I think Alan Fisk kind of reached out to me, and we connected, and I've learned about the Kama Muta concept. And then I realized, wow, like this is actually so much more developed than all some transcendent emotions that we've started to study within the context of media. And so that's kind of what inspired me to kind of also think about it more for this chapter, where I obviously argue that maybe Kama Muta is something that we should consider more as a comprehensive theory almost for all of those transcendent experiences. And I came to study kind of these transcendent emotions from basically studying the opposite in my dissertation. So in my dissertation, I looked at anti-hero characters and looked at morality and moral complexity. And so talking about watching stimulus material, I watched a lot of crime dramas and kind of action films that are dramatic and tragic and have, this anti-hero that's kind of good and bad at the same time. And that consumption of stimulus material to find stimulus material for my studies certainly had an effect on me. Like I noticed it in terms of just affecting my emotions, obviously, and even dream about Denzel Washington in Man on Fire and whatnot. And so I was like, ooh, I don't know if I really want to do this for the rest of my career and have that part of my dreams. I'd rather have kind of awe experiences of the Grand Canyon or gratitude experience as part of my dream. So how about maybe venturing out into something a little bit more positive? And so this is then when I came across the whole positive psychology movement. I personally was really getting into spirituality. And so these two basically connected, then manifested in studying transcendent emotions within media, which is where I ended up now.
Okay. Would you also say that, because now you said that you had like more to focus on negative emotions and then the positive ones, did it actually change something in you? Like, did you feel happier maybe because you like used, or like you actually took more time to spend with more positive things and contents?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's really kind of the funny anecdote that I've learned in grad school where Art Rainey was talking about actually Zillman, right, kind of the old forefather or big forefather of a lot of media effects theories, and how he, when Zillman studied pornography, how that had affected his life. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh man, yeah, that makes sense, because you have to watch a lot of that stimulus material. And so then I found basically the same happening to me with watching those crime dramas. And I'm just a very sensitive person in general, I guess, and also when it comes to media reception. And so I totally noticed that difference when I would be watching a lot of those crime dramas. You can think about it more almost like cultivation effects in terms of, oh, there's all crime out there. Mm. I can think about it in terms of absolutely an emotional effect of more negative or more just kind of these complex, obviously morally challenging thoughts also that would come up, which I also enjoyed. I mean, I like to also think about problems in kind of more complicated ways of morality in general. But then switching kind of to, the transcendent emotions research and diving into positive psychology and diving into reading like what is like defining spirituality and what that means, certainly also then again opened up my viewpoint of the world in another way, in a more positive way. I'm not going to say that obviously now I'm not thinking about the negatives of the world, not at all. I think that's very important. But it definitely affected me personally in the sense that I would experience naturally more positive emotions and more of those deeper and meaningful experiences that we get from watching Eudaimonic entertainment in general. Mm-hmm. You spend so much time on it, like naturally anything we spend a lot of time with in our lives is affecting how we think, feel, and behave. So
it's probably also something that's like really subconsciously as well, I think, for a lot of people. So then when you actively think about it and change it, I think that's also really nice to think about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, then we just want to summarize like in just a few statements what your chapter is actually about. And your chapter is, or you wrote it to give an overview of a Muta as an eudaimonic entertainment experience, especially as you said in media, so to put the focus on that. And it's built around the relational models theory and distinguishable from Haidt's model of moral emotions. So these are the two kind of theories that you dive a little more into when you wrote the chapter. Then as well, that in media context, especially and in narratives, it's achieved by having this intensification that you already mentioned in communal sharing relationships, endangering them, but also then getting back to it. Like you said, a perfect example is this Edeka commercial. Like you can just see this kind of structure going through it. And that you recommend, as you also said, that maybe Muta might be better suited than the previously used concept of elevation to actually measure meaningful effective responses in eudaimonic media. And that's why I wanted to ask you, where do you think these kind of concepts differ? Like the concept of elevation and the Muta concept, where's like the main difference maybe that the audience can also think about what both of them are?
That is the question, right? Is there a difference? Is there not a difference? I mean, obviously the main difference or the idea is how elevation has been conceptualized is that it is only elicited basically from moral beauty and moral elicitors, moral virtues. And so Kama Muta expands beyond that, and that the elicitor doesn't have to be moral. It can just be two people meeting each other again after a while. Like there's no, I mean, again, obviously it could be an argument that that is moral too, but not based on kind of the moral foundations theory as we have it now, or even if we think about it from like a developmental perspective. So there, my argument obviously is that Kama Muta would be encompassing kind of more experiences and therefore encompasses elevation. And again, yeah, the difference would be based on the elicitors. And obviously there hasn't been a direct study that compared the two, plus it would be really hard because the experiential and perceptive component obviously is very similar in terms of if we feel elevated and how elevation even has been measured versus then how Kama Muta has been measured, where I again see Kama Muta as a superior concept because it has just been developed with not only measuring it based on vernacular labels, but also based on these other physiological dimensions, perception dimensions, valence, arousal, all these things that make it, I think, a little bit more robust than just asking a person if they just felt touched, moved, or what are kind of the main, or tender, what are the main things that elevation has been measured with.
Yeah, that's also something that we wanted to get to, but maybe I could just ask now, especially when you think about the facts, like you said, also the physical things that you can measure, especially from a scientific perspective, that's really important to actually get a good look at it. But is there maybe, like, when you think about facts in the facial action coding system, some kind of facial expression people use when they feel Kama Muta? Like we have this awe, but is it something that you raise maybe your eyebrows a little or something? Is there something that you maybe found in your research, or is it not that well researched yet, that if you can actually show Kama Muta from the outside, then
yeah, that's a good question. That would be definitely a question for Thomas or Johanna or Beata, because they're the psychologists really there that do more of that work. We haven't, I haven't done any work in that area, and I wonder. It's a good question. I'm sure, again, also Ellen Fisk would have a good idea of, there is just kind of one facial expression. I think he's a lot talking about, the movements, like the gestures
like on the heart,
that are certainly very specific for that experience. But probably it will be hard to maybe measure with facial action coding system, in the sense that it's probably a little bit more of a mixed emotion, but maybe that would be it. It would be kind of the sad eye, but the smiling Duchenne smile, right? Like almost like the opposites of two emotions at the same time at the face, which is really interesting. And I wonder if anybody has done work with that actually. Yeah,
it's actually really also nice, maybe if someone, because we're making this video especially for students and maybe also people who know that kind of area, maybe you guys can actually make a study of that. That would be really interesting to see, like also just in general for this kind of research area.
Yes,
all sure. Right. Then another question, like where's the threshold actually in Kama Muta experience? Would you say that is something can be considered Kama Muta at a certain threshold, or is it maybe like really subjective and very variable? Like, is there something that you can say that there's like, up from this point on you would consider it Kama Muta, and from this point on maybe it's just sadness or just nostalgia or something like that?
How I guess it gets into a little bit of how we define emotions, if it's on a distinct level or a dimensional level. And I guess as far as I understand the Kama Muta experience, it would be more of a distinct emotion. The researchers have found that it is different from sadness. It is different from, I think, awe as well, and some other emotions. So if that's the case, then it is there's no necessarily a threshold, but either you experience it based on the listener or you don't. And the argument would be obviously that the majority, and that's also obviously what they found across different cultures and different languages, is if you see just, let's say, a reunion of two people, that's what you experience, and you don't experience sadness and you don't experience something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's also really interesting, especially if you think about maybe how long it lasts. Like if you like you studied it a lot, I think, Muta as well, especially in the studies. Have you tried studying it in a longitudinal way, like that you can see, okay, people feel it maybe just in the moment? Because we have the CRM, the
continuous response measurement.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. And that's the argument with media examples, that you actually would have, it's short-lived. You have to measure it based on the stimulus. So obviously when we measure reception, media reception phenomena, a lot of times we have people watch a 90-minute film and then we ask them how they feel. And so the Muta experience would be definitely weaker if we do it that way than if we ask kind of continuously throughout, like, here was an listener, what did you like, did you feel this? And so it would be way higher if we measure it right after each stimuli. That's kind of one of the things to definitely note.
Yeah, and you also mentioned in your text that it's also maybe that it gets a lot more eroded, or I'm not sure what word you can use exactly, but that it gets into the mixture of these emotions, and so it's obscured a lot more if you don't measure it like exactly after a stimulus. So that's really important to note when you, or anyone else who like measures Muta, that you think about this as well. That's just for maybe short term, it's better to measure it as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's, that actually brings us to measures, but you already said like a lot about them, like that you can use the CRM techniques, like the measurements. Are there also any other ones that can be used as well? Like any other measurements, or have there been any other measurements used that you know of?
I mean, there is obviously the Muta scale, which has the various dimensions. Okay. I wonder, again, that kind of maybe facial action coding system, if that could be something that could be explored in future research. And other physiological measures, of course, we know from the questionnaires they're asking about the goosebumps and kind of the warm feeling in the chest and that, but obviously that can be measured actually physiologically too. So that would be really cool too.
So would you recommend using scales and psychophysical reactions as well?
Yeah, that would be great. Specifically, I mean, Muta again has been mostly explored just within itself, like within social psychology as a concept, but the application to the media world is still relatively new. So applying that, really all these measures to the reception phenomena, to media stimuli, it would be great to have kind of a 360 measure of the concept.
Yeah, I think it would also like maybe make it a little better to grasp what it really is, and to maybe define it a little better, and actually have the distinguishable concepts or like the distinguishable elements to actually say, okay, that's Muta, that's something else. But it's something that a lot of people can maybe take into consideration when they want to research this kind of phenomenon, I think.
Yeah, definitely.